Hello and welcome back. So another great week of hockey, some highlight reel goals, some impressive performances, and a lot to like fantasy-wise from some guys. We'll cover the Week 2 performers as well as the Week 3 schedule and waiver ads today, including ads by category and goaltending streams for this week as well. But as always, let's first jump right in and take a look at the Week 3 schedule. So this week, 11 teams play 4 times, and only 3 teams only play twice. So those teams are Calgary, Nashville, and Philly. So if you have marginal waiver type players on those teams, maybe Tyler Toffoli, maybe Nino Niederreiter, Granlund, Kevin Hayes, some of those guys are potentially droppable for week 3 as they are only playing 2 games this week. You can see here everybody in green plays 4, everybody in red plays 2, everybody else gets the average 3-game week. And there are 11 teams that play 4 times, so that is good news. Now, the light nights this week are Wednesday. They only have 3 games on Wednesday and 5 games on Sunday. So those are the 2 light nights. Monday is relatively heavy compared to most weeks. But yeah, Wednesday and Sunday are a little bit lighter. But that's pretty decent. 3 games and 5 games on the light nights. And when you factor in back-to-backs and the strength of schedule, the 3 best schedules this week, as anointed by me, are Toronto, Vegas, and St. Louis. So if you look here, Toronto and Vegas play each other on Monday night. That will be a really interesting game. Lots of high-powered offense. Eichel versus Matthews in that game as well. That'll be must-see TV on Monday night. But after that, Toronto has a pretty favorable schedule as they make the West Coast swing through California. They're in San Jose Thursday, and then a back-to-back in LA and Anaheim on Saturday and Sunday. But those are all winnable games. So let's take a look at who you can add from Toronto. Now, obviously, most Leafs are going to be owned up in your leagues. The clear favorite ad this week is Nick Robertson. So he got into the lineup playing against his brother and the Dallas Stars. 2 goals, including the game winner. Only 14 minutes of ice time, but he did get a little power play time in there as well. And you've heard people like Austin Matthews say things like, I don't need to help him with his shot. It's probably the best on the team. So he definitely has goal scoring potential and can rack up shots as well. 6 shots through 2 games. A couple hits in there as well. 24% owned, so he may be available on your waiver wire, and he's a left winger. So if you're in need of a left winger, that's definitely a guy to target as he's not completely owned up yet. I would predict by next week his ownership will be in the 30 to 40% range as he starts to get a little bit more ice time. Now, other than that, the only other waiver guys worth a look are hits and blocks guys. So Rasmus Sandin, only 4% owned, 3 assists in 6 games, not bad. 2 of those on the power play, but 19 hits. That's top 25 in the league right now, so not something that I expected out of Sandin. But he is bringing quite a bit to the table, a couple blocks as well. So he's getting you some assist coverage, some power play production, a couple of shots here and there, the big hit volume, and then a couple of blocks as well. And he's 4% owned, so he's likely there for you on your waiver wire. And if you want more of a combined hits and blocks guy, Justin Hull, 2% owned, getting some shots, 13 hits, 15 blocks. And that blocks number is currently 10th in the league. So something to look at in terms of hits and blocks leagues if you're looking for that deep play, only 2% owned. Now, if you need that goaltending start on Sunday, and we're gonna come back to Sunday in a little bit, but I'd imagine that the Leafs will run with Samsonov against Vegas, and then San Jose will be the start that Källgren gets. So keep an eye out for who they start on Saturday night. They do play back-to-back, so there will probably be a couple of some opportunity there for the backup to get in. He didn't look great in his first start. 833 save percentage, 305 goals against, but they do need to use a backup. Matt Murray's on the IR, and they do have a back-to-back game on Saturday and Sunday. The Anaheim game, I would assume they're going to give Källgren, just with the strength of schedule and everything else. And Anaheim is likely to be more of a high-scoring game, and they're probably going to have to outscore whoever they put in net in that one. Anaheim's been giving up a ton of goals, but these are basically the only waiver ads for Toronto, as most of their top guys, top 6 guys, and the top defensive guys are owned up, but they do have a nice schedule this week. Now, I quickly want to remind you that you can access the interactive schedule on the right here. So this one's not interactive, but you can get the interactive version in the Patreon link in the description below by signing up for one of the 2 tiers, either $3 for just the visualizations that you see here, including all the other ones that I've used in these videos, and then for $5 you get all of that plus access to our community Discord. But getting back to the schedule, as we mentioned before, Vegas plays Toronto on that Monday night. They have a back-to-back. They play San Jose, so that's a pretty favorable second night of the back-to-back for Vegas. And then they've got Anaheim and Winnipeg later in the week. And then, yeah, so all of these are, 3 of these are home games for Vegas. So they do have to go on the road to San Jose, but every other game is at home. So that's a pretty decent 4-game week, 3 at home, and all teams below 500 after the Leafs game. So there are some options for Vegas exposure this week, and let's take a look at them. The obvious choice for Vegas, and I've mentioned him briefly before, is Riley Smith, only 17% owned. He started hot. He was playing the left side on the top line, and he was getting PP1 time. He's cooled off a little bit in terms of point production to an extent, but the high floor is there because of his shot volume. So 23 shots currently has him 13th in the league in shots, and of those shots, guys, he and Trevor Moore are the only 2 available on most waiver wires, and we'll come back to that in a little bit in this video. But a favorable schedule, plenty of offense this week. If you have him, hold on to him. If you need a right winger, you can definitely go out there and grab Riley Smith. Another guy who only works in a league with blocks, and not even hits, just blocks, Alec Martinez, 14% owned. The 24 blocks ranks him 2nd in the league behind David Savard. David Savard only 4% owned. So if you're in a categories league and you find yourself getting destroyed in blocks every week, grab Martinez as your 4th or 5th D and try to climb back into your matchup this week. He's going to be getting 4 games, some of them favorable, and he is a blocks machine right now. If you want more of that combined hits and blocks D, then look at Braden McNabb, 9% owned, 14 hits, 17 blocks. He's averaging around 19 minutes per game, so he's going to help you in those 2 categories as opposed to just one category with Martinez. And then if you do want just a hits guy, especially a hits forward, Keegan Colasar, only 2% owned, dual center right wing eligible, and his 20 hits ranks him tied for 11th in the league. So he's one of these guys, and we'll come back to that when we look at the ads by hits coverage in a couple of minutes here. He's one of the few guys, the hits guys, that plays 4 times this week. So if you're looking for a straight hitter with dual position eligibility, you could do a lot worse than Keegan Colasar. He's on a good week this week. Now, the best schedule in terms of waiver ads may belong to the St. Louis Blues. As you can see, they have an away game Monday night against a middling Winnipeg team. Then they're home against the Oilers, and then back on the road to play Nashville. And that will likely be a loss because, 3 games in 4 nights, plus the travel, cross the border, and everything else on the first part of that travel leg. But then they have Montreal Saturday, which is a favorable matchup for them as well. And the key is that they've only played 3 games in the first 2 weeks of the season, so they're likely fresh, and most people probably haven't been looking at them on the waiver wire yet. So let's take a look before everyone else does. Now, before we get into the waiver ads, if Torrey Krug or Justin Falk is there on your waiver wire, you should scoop them up immediately. So Krug is 90% owned. He has a goal, 1 assist, 2 power play points, 4 shots, 3 blocks in 3 games. But Justin Falk, 88% owned, 3 goals, 1 assist, 7 shots, 7 hits, 7 blocks. So basically the defenseman of the week in fantasy, doing it all, and continuing his goal scoring pace from last season as well. I imagine that neither of those guys are available on your waiver wire, but if they are, you could definitely go out and grab them. They have a favorable schedule, and they are getting a lot of production, especially Falk with goal production. As far as players that are more likely to be on your waiver wire, Ivan Barbashev, 27% owned, dual position, center, left wing eligible. None of these stats are going to be eye-popping as St. Louis hasn't played much yet, but over a shot per game, he does have a goal, and he's been getting a little bit of power play time as well. Now, in terms of other waiver ads, any of these guys are potential options. We just don't have a lot of data in terms of stats this year because they haven't played much. But if you're in a face-off league, definitely go out and grab Ryan O'Reilly, 56% owned. He's getting you a ton of face-off wins. On top of that, he's got a couple shots and hits and blocks. Nothing crazy there yet. But face-off leagues, he's one of the top 10 face-off winners in the league. So if your league has a point weighting for 1 point per face-off win or something crazy like that, definitely take a look at Ryan O'Reilly. He's just a straight center though, so if you're not in one of those leagues, maybe keep that in mind. But then yeah, if you're looking for some hits, maybe Colton Parayko with a couple hits on the season so far. Jake Neighbors, 6 hits and a goal. 5 shots on top of that. He's a strict left wing, only 1% owned. Nick Leddy is getting a little bit of everything done. So 2 assists, 4 shots, 3 hits, 8 blocks. And then he's also getting 22 minutes a night, and he's in the top 4. So you could do a lot worse than Nick Leddy if you're needing that really deep defenseman play. Only 1% owned. So if you're in a deep 16-team league, he's probably still there for you. And he is getting a decent amount of category coverage. Just not the goals or power play production. But if you don't need that power play production, he's good for pretty much everything else. And then, Brendan Saad, he's getting a pretty decent line assignment in the top 6, 5 shots, nothing crazy so far. He's a guy that I would monitor, not necessarily somebody I'm jumping to go grab. But yeah, he is available in most leagues at 3% ownership. So if you're in a matchup in week 3 and it's coming down to the wire, you'll likely need some guys playing on Sunday to put you over the top. And as I mentioned before, the Devils, Rangers, Leafs, Knights, and Wild, and the Jets all play 4 times this week. So if you're torn between 2 guys on the waiver wire and you want that favorable Sunday matchup to help you win your week, you can take a look at some of these guys. Now, the Devils have a nice schedule this week. They're at home versus Washington Monday. They're away at Detroit Tuesday, so not a great second night of the back-to-back. But then they have Colorado Friday and Columbus Sunday. So they play 3 of the usual off nights, but that Colorado matchup on Friday is going to be difficult. But what we're looking at here is the Sunday matchup against Columbus, and that could give you some fantasy value. So Nico Hischier, when healthy, is playing exceptionally well. If you haven't been paying attention, he's on fire. He's only 36% owned. 4 games, 2 goals, 4 assists, 6 points, 1 power play point, 14 shots, 5 hits, 2 blocks. So point production and shot volume. And if you're in a face-off league, he's getting it done in the face-off circle as well. I have him on my team, which has a 1-point face-off weighting. So he's a pretty much do-it-all player in a face-off league. And if you're not in a face-off league, he's still definitely fantasy ownable. 6 points in 4 games is very good. He's getting top-line minutes. And it appears as though the top line in Jersey is Palat, Hischier, and Jesper Bratt. So all 3 have picked up fantasy relevance. Now, Palat is 40% owned, 3 goals, 6 shots, 11 hits through 5 games. Jesper Bratt, 81% owned, so not likely to be there. But if he is there, 8 assists in 5 games, 2 on the power play, and 13 shots. But again, Nico is leading the Devils in scoring and driving the bus for that line, and he's at least owned, or he's the least owned of them all at only 36%. Now, if you're in a deeper league and you're a little bit more desperate, Dawson Mercer is in the top 6, currently playing with Jack Hughes and Igor Sharangovich. So both of those guys are getting the garden seat with Jack Hughes. Mercer is a shot volume option, so 2 goals, 1 assist, 2 power play points, 15 shots, 4 hits, 2 blocks. And then Sharangovich, a goal, an assist, 11 shots, 2 hits, 6 blocks. But if you only need that shot volume and dual position eligibility, maybe check out Eric Haula. He's a center left wing dual eligible. He's only 15% owned, no points on the year, but 21 shots and then 8 hits and 3 blocks on top of that. So these are the better waiver wire pickups this week for New Jersey, and to see Hischier at 36% is kind of nuts. I think that has a lot of his injury history baked in. So if he's there on your wire, you're going to get 4 games out of him this week and a favorable Sunday schedule against the Blue Jackets. Now, the Leafs against the Ducks has a lot of potential to be a high-scoring affair, but we covered the Leafs just a minute ago, and most of those guys are already owned up. The Wild have a great matchup against the Hawks, and some of their top 6 guys are available, but I'll come right back to that. The Rangers do have some guys that are available. So this week, I'm currently holding Philip Hedl, mainly because I picked him up for a spot stream about 2 weeks ago and ran out of roster moves, but he is dual center right wing eligible, 2 goals, 1 assist, 9 shots, 6 hits, 5 blocks in 5 games. And only 12% owned. You could do worse. He is the 3rd line center, though. So if you're looking for one of the more compelling options, you have Lafreniere in the garden seat with Panarin and Trocheck, at least for now. So Vitaly Kravtsov is back and healthy. Lafreniere likely took his spot on that line in the top 6 with Panarin and Trocheck, but you never know. Lafreniere is 53% owned, 1 goal, 2 assists, 18 shots, 8 hits in 5 games. So he's become a shot volume guy. Same thing with Trocheck. Trocheck has 20 shots on the year. That's likely a result of Panarin getting off to an incredible start. And, you know, another guy on this list, K'Andre Miller. I love K'Andre Miller as a hockey player, but I wouldn't recommend him for fantasy quite yet. So 2 assists, 11 shots, 10 hits, 6 blocks. That's okay, but for a hits and blocks guy, you could find a little bit better on the waiver wire. He's not putting up the crazy offensive production thus far. I do love his game, though, so we'll have to keep an eye on that as we go forward. But then you have Kaapo Kakko playing top line with Zibanejad and Kreider. He's getting PP2 time, only 11% owned. He has 2 goals, 11 shots, 4 hits, and 4 blocks. And that's a very favorable matchup against Arizona on Sunday night for an explosive offensive team. So that would be a guy, I mean, if you're looking on Sunday and you need a right winger or you need somebody in your lineup, you could get probably Kakko, maybe Lafreniere. Hedl might be there for you as well. And then, as I mentioned before, the next best matchup on Sunday is the Minnesota Wild at Chicago. So if you're looking for exposure there, Eriksson Ek, 50% owned, 2 goals, 1 assist, 2 power play points, 19 shots, just outside the top 25 in the league, 7 hits and 4 blocks. And if you're in a face-off league, he's averaging 9.2 face-off wins per game thus far. And in my face-off point-weighted league, he's ranked 46th. So yeah, he's definitely a guy for face-off leagues if you're in one of those. If you're not, he's still a very relevant player playing in the top 6 in Minnesota. But speaking of the top 6 in Minnesota, Ryan Hartman, 49% owned. He's giving you Kaprizov and Zuccarello exposure for half the price, albeit with half the production. So 2 assists, 14 shots and 5 hits through 5 games. But in this type of matchup, it could be a great time to go grab top line Ryan Hartman as he's facing the Blackhawks, who actually, at 2-2, that's not terrible, despite how bad they appear on paper. Now, the play of the week, especially for all of us Ekblad owners looking for a new power play quarterback defenseman, Kalen Addison, 27% owned, 6 assists, 4 power play points, 7 shots, 2 hits, 4 blocks in 5 games. So he's getting all the PP1 time, although not getting as much 5-on-5. He's been getting 15 to 17 minutes of ice time per night. But we will see in a couple minutes here, he's one of the top assist guys, and he's one of the top power play guys to pick up off the waiver wire. So if you need either of those categories, you can go and grab him. And I just wanted to mention Marco Rossi struggling early on. He's got 1 shot and nothing else, only 9:48 of ice time. And this is why you don't rely on rookies in fantasy. This is why you don't draft rookies in fantasy. They're just too unpredictable. And I thought when I was looking at Marco Rossi, he was getting drafted way too high just because they already have 4 centers in Minnesota that were ahead of him. Now, you could argue Tyson Jost wasn't, but at least 3 other centers are ahead of him on the depth chart, and you can see it here with the ice time. He's only playing 9:48. He's 5% owned, so if you're in on him, maybe wait until he starts to show it to you first. Now, speaking of rookies, I just ripped people for prioritizing rookies, but the reason I said that is because I've mentioned in the past, you don't draft rookies. You look for them to get hot and then ride them week to week on the waiver wire. So let's take a look at who's been getting it done in the Calder race. Now, this list is sorted by points, and the names in gold are the players who play 4 times this week. So Kalen Addison, as I just mentioned, leads the way, 6 points in 5 games, all apples, 4 power play points, and 4 games this week with that great Sunday matchup. But then Shane Pinto getting it done for Ottawa, 4 goals, 1 of them on the power play, 12 shots, and he's only 7% owned. You also have Beniers. He's pretty owned up, 47%, 6 games, a goal, 3 assists, a power play point, 12 shots. McTavish, 28% owned, 5 games played, no goals, 4 assists, 1 on the power play, and 10 shots. Cole Perfetti, the only other player on this list with 4 games this week, 15% owned, a goal and 3 assists, and 1 power play point in 5 games. He's likely playing in the top 6 still, so he could get you some exposure if you're in a deeper league and you're looking for that rookie to kind of set you up for this week. In terms of the ads, the two guys would be Perfetti and Addison. But I did want to mention some of these other guys. JJ Peterka, only 2% owned. 5 games played, 2 goals, 2 assists, 7 shots. He's looked very good for Buffalo. Buffalo has a lot of interesting fantasy files that we'll look at a few more along the way here. Kent Johnson did get called up, so he's back with Columbus, likely due to that injury to Patrick Laine. He's 7% owned, 5 games, a goal, 2 assists, and 9 shots. So nothing crazy yet, but he's got 3 points in 5 games after the call-up. And then Arbor Jekai, 6 games played, 1 goal, 2 assists, 9 shots, but 26 hits. So that 26 hits and 9 blocks, that hits number is tied for 3rd in the league thus far. So if you need a hits and blocks D-man, grab Jekai, although he does only play 3 times this week, and they are difficult matchups. So he's got Minnesota, Buffalo, and St. Louis. But that may mean he's going to hit and block even more because they're likely not going to be playing with the puck for much of the game. So definitely a guy to look at if you need hits, and he just beat the wheels off Zach Kassian in the game against Arizona. So he's definitely showing himself early in the season to be a pretty decent option. I remember reading a story. He was working at Costco like 2 years ago, and now he's playing decent minutes in the NHL and is now fantasy relevant in hockey. So that's kind of crazy and an interesting file to look at this week. Now, as we look back at week 2, a few players had monster weeks, and I'm not going to cover them all. Some of them are the usual suspects, Brady Tkachuk, Pastrnak, McKinnon, Makar, etc. But how about Val Nichushkin? So we talked about Val Nichushkin last week, and at that time, he was 79% owned, now 89% owned, and he's currently number 2 overall in category leagues. So what you see here are just his stats from last week. So just last week, 4 games, 3 goals, 5 assists, 8 points, 2 power play points, 13 shots, and 7 hits. That's incredible for a guy who was preseason rank 153, and now he's number 2 in the league right now in categories leagues. This is what you like to find in your draft late. This is why you take some chances later in your draft and pick up a guy like Nichushkin. So if you did that, congratulations. You kind of beat the game here. Also wanted to give a shout out to Rasmus Dahlin this week. Again, these are just this week's stats. 3 games, 3 goals, 2 assists, 5 points, 2 on the power play, 10 shots, 6 hits, and 9 blocks. So getting a little bit of everything done in terms of peripheral coverage. And then his totals for the season: 5 games, 5 goals, 3 assists, 8 points, 18 shots, 8 hits, and 12 blocks. So he's an absolute monster for you if you picked him up. I have him in our data draft league, and I kind of wish I had him in my other league. But also wanted to mention he's the first defenseman in NHL history to score a goal in each of his team's first 5 games of the season. So that's incredible for Dahlin. He's owned up. He's definitely not on your waiver wire. Just wanted to give him a quick shout out for doing some incredible work there in Buffalo. Drake Batherson is pretty owned up, like Nichushkin, 90%, but this week, 3 games, 7 points, including 3 goals, 3 power play points, 11 shots, and 7 hits. So again, doing a little bit of everything in Ottawa. And one other guy I wanted to mention, as we just covered Rasmus Dahlin, tied for Svetch for the league lead in goals last week with 5. Alex Tuck, only 66% owned. So if he's out there on your waiver wire, go grab him immediately. He's a single position right winger. You see his stats from last week, but for the season, 5 games, 6 goals, 1 assist, 7 points, plus 6, 1 power play goal, and he's doing it all while averaging about 17.52 a night. So don't look now. The Sabres are 4-1. They're likely able to get off to this great start thanks to some goaltending. So, in addition to guys like Dahlin and Tuck, they're getting some excellent goaltending. So let's take a look at the week 2 goaltending studs, where we will see 2 of those guys pop up on this list. But first, the top 3 goaltenders last week: Jordan Binnington, 2 games, 2 wins, 1.47 goals against, and a .948 save percentage. He got that shutout against Edmonton, which pissed me off because I had McDavid. Needed some production there, but Binnington shut the door. Great start to the season. If you've ever needed to learn a lesson in patience, and I'm looking at you, Tyler, in the Data Draft Discord group, this is a prime example why you don't freak out after 1 game. So I dropped Blackwood after he looked bad in game 1, And since then, he's bounced back and looked very good. Now, this was kind of predictable, but maybe not this predictable. 3 wins, 1.33 goals against, and a .932 save percentage last week. And Toe Dragons just picked him up in my league to pair with Vanacek. So he's going for the Devils stack. I still prefer my Penguin stack with Jari and DeSmith. This week I got 3 wins, a .230 goals against, and a .937 save percentage with those two. But yeah, Blackwood, I knew I was jumping off the ship too early. But again, I did kind of, paper over that and fix my goaltending situation regardless. But he's a guy who, if you watched my goaltending video, I dropped Demko and he immediately took off. So I dropped Blackwood. He takes off immediately. And then I also put in a waiver claim last Saturday on Carter Hart. And unfortunately, he was grabbed by Lake Mohawk Moose, who had a better waiver priority than me. And that worked out very well for him against me this week. So 2 wins, 150 goals against, .957 save percentage. But thankfully, Shesterkin didn't have the best week, or else I would have definitely been in goaltending trouble in my matchup against him. Now, if you need a goalie on the waiver wire, Eric Comrie, 23% owned, looks very good in Buffalo. 3 games on the year, 2 wins, 3 goals against average, a .930 save percentage, but excellent last week with a .250 goals against and a .945 save percentage against Edmonton and Calgary. So 2 high-powered offensive teams in terms of Edmonton, and then Calgary's just a good overall team with some high offensive players like Huberdeau and Kadri and whatnot, and he shut down both of those teams, got 2 wins in the process. And if you want to stack him with Craig Anderson, Anderson only 12% owned, but ranked 19th overall in category leagues right now. 2 games, 2 wins, 1 goal against, and .970 save percentage. So excellent goaltending in Buffalo so far. And as you can see, I mean, this tandem is not something that you would normally think of or look at. But if you're desperate for goaltending and you want to handcuff both of these guys, these are the 2 guys getting the starts, and they're both playing very well right now. Now, I can't recommend Sam Montembeault despite a decent performance. And then, Varlamov will get a start this week, but they play back-to-back at Carolina and then at home against Colorado on Sunday. So not the best matchup for Varlamov if you're thinking of going that route. But Aiden Hill will likely get a start on Monday or Tuesday against either Toronto or San Jose. If it's the latter, it's definitely worth a stream if you need it. He has 2 wins, a 2 goal against average, and a .934 save percentage. I would imagine he gets that start against San Jose on Tuesday. They're probably going to use Thompson for the better matchup, or the more difficult matchup against the Leafs on Monday night. So you could definitely turn to Aiden Hill for the second night of the back-to-back. And just to quickly mention, the Sharks' goaltending has been pretty solid with Reimer and Kakkonen. I just can't recommend them as they're not getting the wins, and their team is getting outplayed regularly, though they did beat the Rangers the other night. That third period for the Rangers was an anomaly, and the Rangers did go 0 for 5 on the power play. And then the Sharks subsequently lost to the Devils on Saturday afternoon, so not the best in terms of win coverage, but they are putting up some pretty decent stats. .944 for Kakkonen, and I don't think he's on here, but James Reimer is also playing very well. Now, we're going to look at pickups by category in case you need something specific. This will also give us a look at some of the trends, including some of the guys that we've mentioned already. But as we look at goal production, there are a few guys that may be on your wire. I mentioned before, Alex Tuch, 66% ownership, 5 games, 6 goals. He's your best option right now. Bo Horvat, despite a disappointing, if not abysmal start for Vancouver, Horvat is producing. So 6 games, 4 goals, and 18 shots as well. And Horvat is 74% owned, so he may be there on your wire. Now, Nino Niederreiter and Kempe are both decent options, but on a per-game basis, not as prolific. They both played 7 games and have 4 goals each. Niederreiter was getting that favorable schedule in week 1 with 4 games and then 3 games last week, so that was likely why he's higher up on this list. But if you need some deeper options, Victor Olofsson, only 12% owned. He has 2 2-goal games, 1 against Ottawa, 1 against Vancouver, and hasn't gotten anything done on the power play yet. So maybe a buy low opportunity if he can start to score some power play goals, especially for points leagues with power play goal weighting. That was his party piece. That's the one thing that he does all the time, is score goals on the power play, and he hasn't done it yet. The shot volume is pretty decent. The goal coverage is there. He's had two goal games, as I just mentioned, and he's only 12% owned, so he's likely there for you in your league. Another guy I mentioned last week, Travis Konechny, 5 games, 4 goals, 19 shots, excellent production. The only problem is that Philly only plays twice this week. They play on Thursday and Saturday, no less. So it's not a streaming option at all this week. Maybe just something to keep an eye on for subsequent weeks. But another guy that popped off this chart to me is Shane Pinto. So definitely opening some eyes. Only 6% owned. Toe Dragons just picked him up in my league this morning. 5 games, 4 goals, 1 on the power play. Ottawa plays 3 games this week. Monday at home versus Dallas, then Thursday home against Minnesota, and then Saturday at Florida. So not the best in terms of matchups, but he is a goal scorer for deeper leagues, only 6% owned, getting some shot volume as well. And then same thing with Gabe Vilardi. So Fantasy Puck was all over that file earlier this week. 7 games, 4 goals, 3 assists as well, 15 shots, and a power play point. He is 42% owned right now, and LA has some difficult matchups this week. So home against Tampa on Tuesday, home against Winnipeg Thursday, and then home against Toronto Saturday. So a nice homestand, but some difficult opponents coming into Crypto.com Arena. So that'll do it for the goal coverage. Now, if you're looking to add some shot volume to your team, there are plenty of options getting it done. As I mentioned last week, Bjorkstrand shoots a ton, so he's averaging 4 shots per game thus far. He's on PP1 as well, and we covered that earlier, so I'll leave it at that. But Jake DeBrusk, loving life without Bruce Cassidy, averaging a whopping 5 shots per game. So if you want to play that shot prop, he's probably going to go over whatever the line is at this point. He also added 2 goals, 3 assists in 5 games, so a point per game guy as well. And he's sitting there at 42% owned, so he's likely there for you in your waiver wire. And as I mentioned, like, he's in the top. I think he's eighth or ninth in terms of shots in the entire league right now. So definitely getting it done for Boston. And he's seeing top line minutes with Bergeron, so that's excellent exposure for him as well. And he's dual position eligible, left wing and right wing. So that could be a determining factor between some of these guys. Now, Riley Smith was a nice waiver pickup last week, and he maintains that this week. So 4 games, as we mentioned before, and some favorable matchups in there as well against San Jose and Anaheim. Even Winnipeg on Sunday, could give up some goals. He's averaging up 3.83 shots per game and only 17% owned. So I mentioned him in a little bit more detail last week. He's still there for you at 17%. About 16 minutes of ice time. I think he's still on that top line. He's getting PP1 time as well. Some of this has dried up. Only a goal and 2 assists so far in 6 games, but that's not bad at all. And he's getting a ton of shots. So a nice floor for your Riley Smith pickup. Then there's Trevor Moore, and he's also dual position eligible. I mentioned him and his line in the deep value veterans video. But I figured Arvidsson would be the shot guy on the line, but it appears to be Trevor Moore. So he's averaging 3.14 shots per game, 5 assists. So those shots not turning into goals yet. And there are some difficult matchups there this week, as I mentioned before, Tampa, Winnipeg, and Toronto. But if you're in a deep league, he's only 9% owned, and he's getting that shot volume. If you're in a shallow league, maybe just keep an eye on him and wait for a 4-game week out of Trevor Moore. Now, as we look at the power play production, again, most of these guys are owned up, or we talked about them in last week's video. That's the case with Lehkonen. Last week I mentioned him and Nichushkin, and Nichushkin's ownership went up by 10%, but Lehkonen's did not. So only 72% owned. So if he's available, even on a 3-game week, he's playing regular, 5-on-5 minutes with Nathan MacKinnon on line 1, and he's getting PP1 time as well. All of his points are on the power play, which is actually preferable in fantasy. So that's a nice bonus if he's there for you at 76% ownership. But we mentioned before, Kalen Addison, 4-game week, and he's probably the best option here. It's very assist heavy, 6 assists, but 4 on the power play. He's getting some shots and some other category coverage. Not a ton of minutes, 1732, but that's pretty good for a rookie. And then, so I kind of covered him already. We're going to kind of breeze past this a little bit. Nobody else highlighted has a 4-game week, so Addison is definitely the best power play ad. But if you don't have David Krejci yet, and you need a center, what are you doing? So Krejci, 7 points in 6 games, 3 of them on the power play, 10 shots. He's on PP1, getting exposure with all those top guys in Boston, and his line assignment with Pastrnak and either Hall or Zaka is very favorable, and he's only 27% owned. So if you're looking for a center, if you followed my advice during your draft and pushed centers back and grabbed a couple off the wire and maybe they're not working out for you, maybe go out and grab David Krejci. Not a crazy favorable schedule this week. 3 games is not good, not bad. It's right about in the middle. But he's definitely getting it done, and he's giving you elite level production, for pennies on the dollar at 27% ownership. Speaking of pennies on the dollar, Casey Middlestat isn't a great option just because there are so many fantasy centers out there getting it done. But I did want to shout him out as he starts to find his game. 5 games, 5 points, including 3 on the power play. So again, another nice story in Buffalo out there. And in those deeper 14 to 16 team leagues, why not try Nick Ritchie or JJ Moser in Arizona? So Gostisbehere is now 58% owned, so he's getting up there. People are starting to find out about Gostisbehere, but JJ Moser also getting some power play time and power play production. 3 power play points in 5 games. He's only 2% owned. And Nick Ritchie sitting at 4% owned, 5 games, 4 power play points, including a few goals, and he's getting shots and hits on top of that. So, somebody asked me about Nick Ritchie, and I basically said don't do it because, the file isn't that long. The history isn't there for Nick Ritchie putting up consistent production. But right now, if you're in a deep league and you need something, he's definitely getting you some power play production, some goal coverage, shots and hits as well. And he could be a guy to look at, although, again, a 3-game week for both of those guys. Now, in terms of assists, not much different here from anywhere else. You see interesting options with low ownership like Kevin Hayes and Mikael Granlund, but both of them only play twice this week, so not great ads for week 3. But if you're in a shallow league and want some assist coverage, Jesper Bratt is getting it done. So 5 games, 8 points, all of them assists, 2 on the power play, and 13 shots, and he's 81% owned. So he's likely not available in most leagues, but that ownership should be higher, and the Devils play 4 times this week, including a favorable Sunday matchup, as we mentioned before. So I just mentioned Addison and Krejci, but how about Brock Nelson all the way down here? He's got 5 games, 5 assists, 1 on the power play, 12 shots with a few hits and blocks sprinkled in, and he's only 38% owned. Now they only play 3 times again, but that's what you're going to get. These 2 guys up at the top here are the only 4-game guys that are potentially ownable on this list. But yeah, nobody else has a 4-game week. But if you want that hits and blocks D-man with some assist coverage as well, Ivan Provorov, 73% ownership, 5 assists in 5 games with 13 shots, 12 hits, and 19 blocks. So he's doing a little bit of everything for Philly. But again, they only played twice this week, so not a pickup for week 3, just something to keep an eye on for the future. Now, speaking of hits and blocks, again, most of these guys, in fact, almost all of these guys are ownable, and they will be for most weeks. But who has the most favorable schedules? So Tanner Jeannot, I own him. He only has 2 games this week, so I'll probably have to look around and find someone to help me in the hits category coverage. And Jekai, we mentioned him before. Grab him if you need to, but a 3-game week is not the absolute maximum in terms of hits volume for this week. So what you see highlighted and on the left side of the screen are guys who play 4 times this week. So we mentioned Keegan Colasar earlier, also mentioned Sandin, the surprise hitter, top 25 in the league. But how about the Cube? Nicholas Aube-Kubel, 20 hits, dual position eligible, not much else, and not much ice time at that. He's only getting about 9 minutes of ice time. He's 0% owned, so he's there in almost every single league. If you need hits coverage, he's there for you. In terms of another 4-game week, Joni Hakanpää, a 4-game week, 19 hits, a goal on top of that, and some blocks as well. Could be the best hits and blocks combined ad this week. So 19 hits, 9 blocks. That's likely the best you're going to get on the waiver wire, only 9% ownership. If you're not paying attention to Winnipeg, and I'll admit I'm not, I usually would be if I had Kyle Connor, but I don't have him this year, and I'm kind of thankful at this point. But Saku Manalainen has 19 hits and a 4-game week this week. So he's a right wing, single position eligible. Same type of thing with Ryan Reeves. Reeves, single position right winger with 19 hits. He's got a 4-game week this week as well, as I mentioned, with the Rangers schedule. And if you're really desperate, Jared Tenorti, 17 hits and 7 blocks, and he has a 4-game week with Chicago as well. So if you're in need of hits coverage, these are guys who are definitely available, and these are the guys that have 4-game weeks. So they're likely to get more volume. But one thing you want to keep an eye on is that time on ice. So Kolesar, 10:55, Albay Kubel, 9 minutes. Hakanpää's getting a lot more minutes, so he's got a lot more opportunity to throw the body around. So that's what you're going to look for if you're looking for one of these guys, is the highest time on ice. That's going to give you the most chance of getting that hit volume. Now, earlier we looked at some goalie options who are playing well and heating up, but here we'll look at scheduled starts for backups and 1Bs. So basically guys who are playing back-to-back, and they will absolutely get one of the starts. So one of the best waiver ads this week for goaltending, especially if you're a Shesterkin owner, looking at you, Moose, Jaro Halak. He will get 2 starts this week as the Rangers have 2 back-to-backs. They're home versus Colorado on Tuesday. They have Shesterkin in net for that game, I'm assuming. And then Halak will face his old team on Long Island the following night. And then on top of that, the Saturday, Sunday, the Rangers are in Dallas, and Shesterkin will probably get that start. So then Halak will more than likely get the Arizona Sunday game. So if you want him for the whole week, he'll get you 2 starts on a good team with some decent matchups. And if you need a goalie for that Sunday stream to get you that W, you could look at Halak for that if you're desperate. Just keep that in mind for maybe Friday night or Saturday. If he's there on your wire and you're looking like you're behind in goaltending, he could get you that W on Sunday. Now, this doesn't make sense to me. The Rangers and Canes are arguably equal teams, and yet one backup is 36% owned and the other is 3% owned. So regardless, Ranta will see one of the starts Friday against the Islanders or Saturday against the Flyers. Both teams are good defensively and should be low-scoring games, so that could be beneficial to grab for a waiver pickup, a quick stream on a Friday or Saturday, depending on which game he gets. And I can't believe I'm going to talk about a Chicago goaltender, let alone their backup, but Alex Stalock. He was perfect in relief and got the W against Detroit, and he's starting Sunday, today, right now, as I'm recording this video, against Seattle. So let's see how he does there, but he's looked very good so far. Chicago plays 4 times this week, and they do have a back-to-back Saturday, Sunday against Buffalo and Minnesota. So if you're desperate, I wouldn't like to start him against Minnesota, but you could try Stalock there. He looked incredible. If you see his numbers on the screen, 0.75 goals against and a 979 save percentage. So yeah, he's battling. He's not, technically sound, but he's getting in there and he's battling. And that's one of the reasons why Chicago is currently 2-2 and not 0-4. Now, the Avs play back-to-back Friday and Saturday in Jersey and on Long Island. Francouz will start one of those, so he's owned up for the most part. But if he's available, that should be an easy win for you to pick up if you can. And if for whatever reason Georgiev is on your wire, he plays the Rangers on Tuesday. He will likely be incredibly motivated to face his former team. And he will get another start later in the week with a favorable matchup and minimal travel on top of that as they're in the metro area. But he is 92% owned. So if you want some Colorado goaltending exposure, 49%, Francouz is your guy, and he will get one of these 2 games. The Islanders are not the highest scoring team in the league, and New Jersey, they actually are playing a lot better, but I would assume Georgiev gets that start. So maybe look at Francouz on that Saturday Islander game. Now, in deeper leagues, Scott Wedgwood, who came alive last year and has kept it rolling this year with a 2.83 goals against and a 930 save percentage, he will see one of those starts against either Ottawa or Boston. So if I were Pete DeBoer, I'd play Ottinger against Boston and give Wedgwood the Ottawa start, but monitor that goaltending situation if you need a goalie start early in the week and want to get out in front of it. Now, Stuart Skinner is someone I've had my eye on since last year, and he looked very good in a small sample size, and Jack Campbell just isn't getting it done thus far. So, Skinner wasn't perfect in relief against Calgary. He was perfect against Calgary, but he didn't get the win or the shutout because he came in relief. Then he gave up 3 to Buffalo and lost that game. But Edmonton plays back-to-back Wednesday and Thursday against St. Louis and then Chicago. So if Skinner gets that Chicago game, that is a perfect matchup opportunity to grab Skinner off the wire and get an easy W against Chicago. They should get that win. It may be a high-scoring affair, but Skinner is a pretty talented goaltender. 169 goals against and a 944 save percentage. One other thing I wanted to add, you'll likely get the same type of thing out of the Saturday-Sunday matchup for Minnesota with Philip Gustafsson. Now, they play Chicago Sunday, and he'll likely get that start, and it is a great matchup for him, but I didn't put him on this list because he's been bad thus far. So 5.06 goals against and an 860 save percentage. But hey, I'd imagine he gets his first solid start and maybe his first win of the season on Sunday against Chicago. So that could be something, I would rather have Gustafsson against Chicago than Stalock against Minnesota. So, I mentioned Stalock because of his numbers thus far, but, if you want to go the other end of that spectrum and grab Gustafsson, that's probably going to get you the W. So in my own matchup, you'll recall last week I was in panic mode trying to fix my goaltending, and I figured I'd be in for a goaltending bloodbath playing against Shesterkin and Hart, but amazingly my moves paid off. So early in the week, I made a video about how Fantasy Puck helped save my goaltending season as I added Casey DeSmith and handcuffed him to Tristan Jarry, and that worked out very well for me. They combined for a 230 goals against and a 937 save percentage and a couple of wins. So that was very nice. Could have been even nicer if DeSmith put up that other win. But regardless, the numbers are good enough to get me within striking distance. But I also put in a waiver claim on Spencer Knight, which luckily went through on Thursday. So even though Ekblad is out and the D in Florida is a little bit iffy, I did highlight in the Ekblad video that Spencer Knight actually played phenomenally without Ekblad last season and was Rookie of the Month in April during that stretch. I did put that waiver claim in before the news on Ekblad came out, but after doing that video and seeing that Spencer Knight still continued his play, without Ekblad in the lineup, I figured it was worth keeping him. So my goaltending now is Jarry, DeSmith, and Spencer Knight, which I'm pretty happy with. And as I mentioned before, the Boston tandem combined for 2 wins, 2.3 goals against, 937. And I just need 1 win today to tie. So if Spencer Knight plays today and can get the W without destroying my other categories, and if Hart gets the L, I'll tie in wins and win the other categories, and that'll be pretty much a miracle. Now, I would be in a much better position had Connor McDavid not gotten shut out last night against St. Louis. An uncharacteristic off night for Connor McDavid, only 2 shots in 24 minutes of ice time. And that means everything comes down to tonight. So I'd been up 6-2 most of the week, but it is now razor thin, just as it was last year in the playoffs against the Moose. Today, I have Larkin, Trocheck, Burakovsky, Hedl, Werenski, and Gudas. And I'm going to need Gudas to start hitting again as I'm down by 3, mainly because he's turned into a top 4 defenseman, and he thinks he's too cool to hit all of a sudden. So Gudas was getting 4 to 5 hits per game with 16 minutes of ice time, but now he's getting 22 plus minutes of ice time, and he's down to 2 hits or fewer. So that's going to be something that I need from him today to help me get back into the hits column. I'm only down by 3. If he does what he usually does, I could come back and take that category over. But this entire week likely comes down to the Rangers Blue Jackets game at 5 o'clock today. So the Moose has Zibanejad and Panarin. I have Trocheck and Hedl. So however the points fall for the Rangers tonight is likely going to determine our matchup. And I have 0 ads left, so there's nothing else I can do about it other than watch the game and enjoy. But that's going to do it for today's Week 3 schedule preview. If you made it through to the end, I want to thank you for sticking with it, and I will see you in the next one.